Welcome to Below the Frame. I am Matt Vogel, sitting here in my trusty audio booth because I'm going to answer a lot of questions. A couple of months ago, I put out a little call to action, and it was this. Hey, everybody. I was thinking for an episode of Below the Frame, we could do a Q&A. You'd ask questions, I would answer the questions, and it might be kind of fun. So if you have a question for me, or for one of the Muppet performers, maybe I can get them to answer that question. Just leave it below this frame, and maybe we'll answer your question. So I gathered as many questions from you out there. It was really incredible. There were just a ton of great questions, and I cannot wait to dig in and try to answer as many of them as I can. And a couple of things that I should say about these question and answers here. There are some questions, of course, that we got several times. They're repeat questions from several folks out there, and I've tried to be as judicious as possible as I possibly can in picking questions from as many different people as I can. So if you asked a question, or you asked several questions, and you hear somebody else's name attached to a similar question that you asked, please understand I did the best that I could in trying to gather representative questions, especially when they were repeats. Let me see. In that little call to action, I said that I was going to try to ask some other Muppet performers some questions, and you sent a ton of questions in for other Muppet performers, which I thank you so much for. Being as it is summer, and people are on summer vacations, and they are not available to me, not as easily available to me as maybe I had hoped. I'm going to hold those questions for another time, perhaps. And we will ask those Muppet performers those questions when the time is right. But in the meantime, I have taken it upon myself to answer a huge amount of questions, and I could not do it alone. So I asked my family to help me. And over the course of the next few episodes, I have picked one or two members of my family to help me out with questions and answers, questions that you have asked and questions that I will attempt to answer. So we're going to start out today with my second oldest, Hunter. He is going to ask me some questions, and here we go. Take it away, Hunter.
All right.
You have questions.
Yes, I do.
I have answers, or maybe not. Who knows?
I guess we'll see.
We'll see. I guess we will.
All right. Yeah. So I got this first question from Anne, and they ask, do you think there'll be more projects with Kermit being featured more prominently? I feel like we haven't seen him or any of the Muppets in anything big. Plus, something like a show could help people adjust to your Kermit performance, since audiences haven't been given a chance.
Fair.
Also, are you excited for the Jim Henson documentary that just recently came out?
Yep.
Because I sure am. Love the podcast and your work, by the way.
Well, Ann RM3, thank you for your question. I agree. If, Kermit was out there more on a consistent basis, maybe in a show or something, it would, first of all, be fun to do. And I would imagine that's, probably in a list of things that the Muppet Studio has in mind to do moving forward, but I don't know as of now. And for the other part, it's, excited about the Jim Henson documentary. I have seen it. It is wonderful. I encourage everybody to see it if you have not. It is really a lovely portrait of somebody that was a huge inspiration to me when I was growing up. So I encourage everybody to see it. Okay, Hunter, what else we got?
All right, yeah. So then we had two people have very similar questions here.
Okay. All right.
So Marcos Hanglin asks, hello, Matt. Here's my question.
Okay.
How do you experience that moment when someone plays a legacy character for the first time?
Okay. What's the other question?
Nerdy Maria Mania asks, for performers that have taken on legacy characters, how do you balance keeping the spirit and integrity of said character while keeping them fresh and new? And how do all of you balance having new puppet characters interacting with them, since there's such history there?
These are both really great questions. We handle and we discuss at length a lot of the details of these questions in our episodes. There are 3 of them about character inheritors, and it's me, Bill Beretta, Peter Linz, Eric Jacobson. In the 3rd episode, we also have Pam Arciero and Tyler Bunch and Stephanie D'Abruzzo and Jen Barnhart. All of those folks there, all of those Muppet performers are character inheritors, people that are legacy performers of legacy characters. There are more. David Rudman, for example. Really, at this point, almost all Muppet performers are performing a character that was performed by somebody before them, almost all of them, except for Dave Goles. And there are a few others as well. But by and large, most performers, when you think of those Muppet characters, those are legacy characters, and they were probably performed by somebody before them. And the question is, how do you kind of deal with that? The first thing is, as a legacy character performer, we try to be as faithful to the original intention of that performer as we can. We do also have to, it's unavoidable if we're doing it correctly, that a piece of us goes into those characters. It's just inevitable. There's no way for that not to happen. Only because if you don't do that, then it just becomes this kind of a stale imitation of the character, you know? So the character should be able to grow and live in the real world, and the way to do that is to put a little bit of yourself into it. Something that Jerry Nelson always said about his characters were they were just pieces of him that were blown up bigger than life. And that's kind of, we're taking somebody else's character and we're finding the piece of us that fits into that puzzle of that character that came before, and trying to make it breathe and live in the now. When you're also a performer, a fellow performer of somebody else who is coming in, who is playing a new character, a legacy character for the first time, all of us want that performer to succeed and that character to succeed so that they can continue and can live on and evolve in the world today, right? So, we are all part of this repertory company. We are all members of this repertory company that play a bunch of different characters, and the best thing that we can do for our fellow performers is be there for them and have their back, whoever it might be, when they're taking on a new character, to be there and support them, and to be there to stand by them and help them through. Sometimes it can be a difficult process. That make sense?
Makes sense to me.
It's a little jumbly, but it kind of makes sense. All right, what's next?
Yes, another question here. Johnny Confidence asks, what's your favorite Willie Nelson song?
Okay, what's my favorite Willie Nelson song? I think I have two. Always on My Mind. I love that song. And this question is probably coming to me because Kermit was at the Luck reunion, where it was Willie Nelson's ranch, and got to go down to outside of Austin and be part of the Luck reunion show, which was amazing. I would say Always on My Mind, which is just a beautiful, beautiful song. And my heart favorite is going to be On the Road Again. And the reason being that my dad, when we would go on vacation, that was like the first song that he would play as we were pulling out of the driveway and heading down the highway. He would play On the Road Again. So that's the answer to that question.
Several people asked this question.
Okay.
So here are a few of them.
All right, go ahead and read all three of them then, I guess, is what looks like you got three.
All right, Miss Melissa Drew asks, how does one become a Muppeteer? Mm-hmm. Terry Prince asks, for someone who loves the Muppets, how can I learn to become a puppeteer? Is there a school to learn for that? Mm-hmm. And Jimmy Reed asks, if you were to just start puppeteering today, mm-hmm. where would you go to get your start? What kinds of routines do you use to manage the physical demands of puppeteering? Mm-hmm. I think it would be fascinating to hear about this from a few of the performers. Okay.
All right. So I'll take that one first, the physical demands. It is physically demanding. There are a lot of Muppet performers, they've had shoulder issues in the past, or neck issues, or back issues, or wrist issues, things like that in the past. I mean, I said a lot of Muppet performers, but me, I've had issues where I've had like a ganglion cyst removed from my wrist, and I'm assuming that was from a lot of Muppet performing. I've had some like rotator cuff issues, nothing where I've needed surgery, but there are other Muppet performers who have had surgery on their shoulder or on their hip or wherever they might, need, because this is a very physically demanding job. You're not just putting your arm up in the air. You might be putting your arm up in the air, but you might be bending really, really in a very awkward position, or you might be shoved inside a sofa, or you might be, just in a very uncomfortable position, like right next to somebody, and you're both trying to kind of keep your arms up in the air and, keep your heads out of the shot. And, so it is very physically demanding. So the question about that was, what kind of routines do you do? You stretch out ahead of time, and you sometimes just the routine of doing the performing day in and day out. That's kind of the way to manage the demands physically of this profession. So now we talk about, how does one become a Muppet performer? And is there a school to learn for that? Well, there's no real official school other than, 120 some episodes of The Muppet Show, and I don't know how many episodes of Sesame Street, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of episodes of Sesame Street. That, for me, was my school. And that was what I would do. I would study those performances by those performers and those shows, and that was my school. Hi, it's me, Matt. I'm jumping in to interrupt myself here on the question of, are there schools where you can learn puppetry? Because when I'm with my son Hunter, I just kind of answered it a little scattershot, and it's not very helpful. But yes, there are places that you can go to get degrees in puppetry. A simple Google search will show you what's out there. But I wanted to mention a couple of places in particular. Number one, University of Connecticut, UConn. They have a puppetry arts program where you can earn a master's, a BFA, other things like that. And to my understanding, it covers an entire universe of puppetry, not television puppetry alone. Number two, there's the National Puppetry Conference at the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center, and I think it's a 2-week conference altogether. Pam Arciero is the artistic director, and on her episode of Below the Frame, we talk all about that and what is involved, and it happens every June. You have to apply to be accepted into it, and it also covers many different styles of puppetry, not just television puppetry. So, as far as I know, there is no exclusive television puppetry major or school where one can go to learn this. I mean, I could certainly be wrong. To my knowledge, this art form is largely self-taught. Okay, back to the rest of my answer. But really, I mean, there's no real clear defined way of how one becomes a Muppet performer. I've heard everything from people getting auditions, from workshops. I've heard from people, calling out for very specific types of people trying to get a job. Like for me, I answered an ad. They were looking for somebody that was my height, my size, my weight, left-handed. And I answered that ad, and here I am today because I answered that ad. You kind of have to just be diligent, keep your eyes open, because there are times when people are looking for Muppet performers. But I think my biggest thing here would be to say, for people who are wanting to be a Muppet performer, is that I think you should start by creating something of your own, creating something that you're proud of, creating something that you can get out there into the world that might get you noticed somehow, and that's a start, right? Rather than, and I'm not suggesting that anybody's doing this, but just sitting at home and thinking, gosh, I wish I could do that. Be proactive about your own future, about your own, the things that you want to do. So be proactive about it, be creative, create your own things and get those out there into the world somehow. Does that sort of answer that question in a way?
Sounds like it to me.
Okay, what else do we have?
All right, then we've got another question here.
All right.
From Chris Pfizer.
Okay.
You've said that when you were doing the count to Jerry's voice live,
yep,
you could hear him breathing and anticipate when he was going to speak. Mm-hmm. Was this the same with Carol in the later years when he voiced Big Bird, or was that more of a voiceover after the fact? I know it's been said that it's rare to catch the voice live. Have there been any other scenarios where this has occurred. I was thinking maybe live appearances when one of the puppeteers has multiple characters on stage at the same time.
Yeah. So with Jerry and I, this is referring to Jerry being on set and being about 12 feet away or whatever, sitting in a chair. He had his microphone on him. He had a monitor he was looking at. He had his script in his hand, and he would deliver his lines. And I was sitting, like I said, 12 feet away with the count on my hand, and I had headphones on like I do now, and I would hear him breathe in because he was on oxygen at that time toward the end of his life. And so I could hear him breathe in, or I could hear the oxygen, whichever it was, but I could hear right before he was going to go, right before he was going to speak, and then he would do his lines. And Jerry was super consistent with everything. He was just so consistent with his lines, and it was easier for me to kind of catch. I could just hear the rhythms of how he would perform it, and I'd be pretty successful, I would say, about catching live his performance and puppeteering, lip syncing the character, according to what Jerry was saying. Sometimes he would say, don't do that, or do this instead. He would give me little tips along the way. So he's always fully engaged. Carol, we did try that a couple of times with Carol and Big Bird. It was different with Carol because, and I think I've said this about Carol before. Carol, to me, as Big Bird in particular, was always very in the moment, like his reads were always very different from take to take, which to me was a sign of just being like living really in the moment and imagining that he was this 6-year-old Big Bird. And so the reads would change from take to take, whether he was inside Big Bird or whether he was reading the script from Big Bird. That's how I kind of interpreted it. So it was a little harder to do live catching with the lines with Carol. We did try it, and then at the end of the day, I think we would decide, like, he would either loop it. I think that's usually how it was, especially if he was still doing Oscar. That would be one of the situations where sometimes, you might, if it was a Big Bird and Oscar scene, he might be playing Oscar and I might be playing Big Bird, and he might have had an Oscar line and then thrown a Big Bird line live, and I might have caught it live. It might have happened that way, or it might have happened where I would just deliver the line and then he would go in later and ADR the line. A lot of people do it different ways. It depends on how comfortable you are with the other performer that you have playing the character that you're playing. Let's say if you're, let's say you've got, let's say if it's Eric and he has Miss Piggy and Fozzie in a scene together. He's going to play probably the one that in the wide he's going to play, which is showing both characters. He's going to play the one that probably has the most lines. Let's say in this case it's Miss Piggy. So he's delivering her lines, and then somebody else, most likely Peter Linz, is playing Fozzie and replicating the performance of what Eric would be saying for Fozzie. And he might deliver the lines. Peter might deliver the lines for Eric to repeat later in ADR. Or Eric very well may just throw the lines to him live right there because, that's just sometimes we do that. And then in the close-ups, Eric would play both Miss Piggy's close-ups, and then he would also then go over and play Fozzie's close-ups and do the voice for both of them. So that's kind of one of the ways that we do get around performers that play multiple roles and have lines that are opposite each other. So I think that's thoroughly answered.
Yeah, I think that's that one.
Yeah.
All right, let's see here. The next one. Next question here is from Grace Pilo.
All right.
She asks, so there's this interview that came out during the Muppets Mayhem where Floyd and Animal talked about their favorite Eurovision songs.
Okay.
Both happened around the same time. And they mentioned Waterloo, Believe in Me, Tattoo, and I Wrote a Song. Do you actually know these songs, sans Waterloo, everyone knows that one, or was this a scripted interview?
I think I remember this interview, which is saying something, but I don't know those other songs. If I may have heard them before we did the interview, but it was probably a scripted it would have been a scripted interview, I'm sure. because we always have, in those kind of situations, we would always have some form of a scripted interview, and then we can feel free to deviate from it if we wanted to. And if I had said these songs, there's a possibility, I'm going to say 50-50, that I heard the songs beforehand and was at least sort of familiar with them. I have no recollection of them right now, though. So that's the answer to that one.
All right, next one here. Kristen Sullins-Deaton asks, looking back at your childhood, this includes teenager range as well.
Yeah, okay.
What did you do during your upbringing that contributed to where you are now? Anything you would do differently to help you? What was one turn of events that got you to where you are now?
Well, I was always really inspired by Jim Henson and the Muppets and Sesame Street, and I built my own puppets and performed them in the backyard. And I even shot some videos when I was in junior high, I believe, where I shot a Christmas special with the puppets that I had made, and I had a couple of friends perform these. They were actually songs from, I think they were songs from the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer special, the Rankin and Bass stop motion. Yeah. There was a record that came out, and I had the vinyl, and in that album were instrumental versions of some of the songs, so we recorded them. I don't even remember how we recorded them. Probably very, very simply, but we would play back those songs somehow. We recorded our voices to them, and then we did puppeteer them. I don't remember if we had a monitor or not. This was probably before I understood that Muppet performers used a monitor to watch their performances. And also, we didn't have there was no way for me to have a monitor back then because TVs were so big and, it just wasn't really an option. But I remember doing things like that and being creative in that way and being inspired by the Muppets and by Jim Henson to create something that was kind of my own, but kind of not my own. I would write puppet shows that I would do at church or for the PTA. So I was just always creating. And I think that, and I still am always creating in some way, whether it's this podcast, whether it's the Mighty Weaklings, whether it's other projects that I have with other people. I feel like the thing that I have done since I was a kid that has helped me to get where I am today is to never stop creating something, to always be doing something. I remember I was already a Muppet performer, and Joey Mazzarino and I decided to make a short film. And we did. We made a short film called Murder, He Squeaked. It was about this dog who was so in love with his owner, and the owner gets a boyfriend, and he goes a little crazy. This dog goes crazy, and his squeak toy comes to life and kind of tells him that he needs to off the boyfriend so he can have the owner all to himself. So we, Joey and I wrote this script and we shot this video. We didn't know really how to do it. We'd seen films. We'd looked at noir stuff, but we wanted it to be a comedy, and we just created it. We just did it. We just figured out how to do it, and we did it. And then we kind of kept creating in that way for a while. So it's just, I think the answer, this long-winded answer, by the way, is just to never stop creating. That was what it was for me. Never stop creating.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Roddy Tops 64 asks, what's it like working as the puppet captain? A puppet captain.
Okay. Because I'm the puppet captain for Sesame Street. Assistant puppet captain on Sesame Street is Martin P. Robinson. And it's a really fun job. It's not something, again, it's not something that I ever thought that I'd be doing, but when there was a certain point when Kevin was puppet captain that they decided he needed to have an assistant, that became me. I learned from Kevin. And what a puppet captain does essentially is, to begin with, they're at the production meeting, and you've read the script, or I've read the script ahead of time, and I notice all of the different potential puppet gags, I guess, that are going to be involved. Penguins are going to go flying through the air, or we need to get Elmo to ride Mr. Snuffleupagus, whatever it might be. Elmo rides a tricycle. The Count is in a spaceship. You name it. There are so many different variations of like what the writers put into a script that then the puppet captain, along with the director and the producers and the set builders and the Jim Henson Company, they all kind of work together to try to come up with the best solution, the best way forward to execute a plan. And so the puppet captain, me in this case, at the production meeting, kind of gives suggestions on here's how you could do this. Sometimes somebody might have a better idea, and my job is to kind of go, that's a better idea. If I think it's a better idea. That's one of the jobs that I have as a puppet captain. Another job that I have as a puppet captain is casting. So on Sesame Street, we have a bunch of characters that are one-off characters. Like it's a sentient ball that comes in for the day or whatever, or it's a lamb. There are 3 sheep number 1, number 2, and number 3. My job, I get to cast the performers out of our pool of performers. I get to cast them, and Stephanie's going to play sheep number 1, Carmen's going to play sheep number 2, and Peter's going to play sheep number 3, something like that. And you have to kind of look at the script and make sure that Stephanie's not playing Prairie Dawn in that same scene, or Rosita's not also in it, or Ernie, or whoever. So there's a little bit of that involved. And in that process, I have producers help me make sure that my casting choices are going to work. So I'm grateful for the help of Karen Leibovich and Bryce Lauren Walker for helping me do my job. Another thing the puppet captain does is I am responsible for the mentorship program. And that is a program that we have that is designed to look for up-and-coming talent and kind of put them through the paces of how to be a Muppet performer. It's a program that we started several years ago, and it's something I'm very proud of. And we have some great mentees that are in the program now. And that's just part of what we do as what I do as a puppet captain. Then in the post-production process, I look at the shows when they come to me. I look at the rough edits. I look at the rough edits. Sorry, I just got bored with the sound of my own voice. Okay, I watch the rough edits, and then I make notes on that, like, oh, can we move the cut from this camera to this camera a little bit later, because I noticed something that, puppetry wise, that might look better another way. That's some of the things I do as puppet captain.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Did you zone out there and fall asleep?
No,
just for a minute.
I was
just for a minute.
I was there mostly.
Because I did. I just zoned out a little bit.
From Stephanie Torres. Mm-hmm. She asks, how much do puppeteers get to contribute to creating new characters? What are the differences in those processes between the Disney Muppets and Sesame Street? Okay.
A lot of times the characters come to us and they are already written. So I mentioned, some like the one-off characters. They come to you kind of fully written, but then you can, based on what the character looks like, or based on what performers is playing that character. If it's a hunk of cheese, but it's an angry hunk of cheese, and Tyler Bunch is playing it, it's kind of like up to Tyler, like what kind of voice he wants to bring to it, and what kind of emotion, and how angry. And then the producers and the director and the writer, they kind of would say, okay, that might be a little too angry, bring it back a little bit. And then Tyler will do his job as an actor to bring back the anger on the cheese, on the hunk of cheese. There's another instance where Joe the Legal Weasel, Peter Lintz, brought a ludicrous laugh to this character. It was written, I believe, and I'm pretty sure it was already written, but this laugh was not written. And Peter just put this insane laughter into it that kind of really defined the character. And it was just a laugh that he did, and it's crazy. So it's a balancing act in the creation of characters, and they're pretty similar between Muppets and Sesame. Really, there's some give and take on both sides of things. For the end of the day, for the Muppet performer, it's always like, what's the funniest?
It's probably a pretty valuable thing
it is. Yeah,
with.
I think so. It is for us. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
All right. Next one we got here is from Nick Curcio, and he asks 2 questions, actually.
Okay.
Have you ever experienced Muppet Vision 3D at either Disney World or when it was in California Adventure?
Yes, I have. I love them.
Yeah, it's great. We go there.
Yeah. And you know what I love the most is I love the pre-show. I love the 3 different, do you remember those? The 3 different TV screens and like they move from one screen to another. I absolutely love it. So I answered that one.
And then the second question here is, what is your favorite Muppet film you haven't been a part of?
Oh, well.
For example, the original Muppet movie.
My favorite, I
Caper.
certainly love the original Muppet movie. I love all 3 of the original films. Muppet Movie, Great Muppet Caper, Muppets Take Manhattan. I also have a very soft spot for Muppet Christmas Carol. That's me answer for that one. I don't know why I suddenly did that, but anyway. All right, what's your last one here?
Spike the Chupacabra asks, and I know you love music and puppetry, but what are your other hobbies or things that you're interested in?
Other things I'm interested in. I love film and filmmaking, and I love what else do I love? I mean, I do love making music and the process of collaboration. It's really, I think, to me, it's like a big thing is like collaborating with people. I love doing that. That's a hobby, I guess. I don't know. I had a friend recently who asked me if I would do the score for a film of his. So I did that. And then, I wrote a couple of songs for it. And, so it's just like, just being open to different experiences, I think. It's not necessarily a hobby, but it's something that I do enjoy doing. I love to go to baseball games with my kids. I love doing that. That's so much fun. What else? What other hobbies do you think I have?
Other hobbies.
I don't know. Like filmmaking, I think, like I said, or editing things like I used to do. I don't do it as much anymore. But I used to do like these edits, like Vogel Kids videos, where I would edit together the whole year of our kids. And I've just gotten too busy in recent years to be able to actually do. I think I did one last year, though. It was like 3 different videos, but they were all thematic. And I kind of took the videos from that year and put them into something backed with music. And that was kind of a return to a hobby that I haven't done for a long time. Stuff like that. But I'm always creating, I feel like.
I was just about to say, I feel like you're always like creating things. I mean, whether it's like music or short films or whatever, I think you just like creating things. Like even building this whole set too.
Building this little studio?
Yeah.
Yeah. I built this guitar here. I built this during the pandemic. It's not a real Gibson Les Paul. I built it. It was a kit. You can buy these kits and put them together, and that's what I did there. I even tried to do the electric, there's electrical stuff in it, and I couldn't do it. I tried, but I couldn't. I had to take it somewhere and have them do it.
So I guess just creating things.
Creating things is my hobby. Okay, so that was the end of those questions. Do you have a question, a question about my job or whatever that you've thought of that hasn't been answered?
I have one, and you can stop me if it's already been asked.
Okay.
But was there a moment or a couple moments after you started working for Sesame Street that made it, like, that solidified it in your mind, like, oh yeah, this is what I want to do?
Yeah, I think after I met Carol, that was the first thing that came to my head. Now, I had met John Henson before that because he was the very first person that I met in the Jim Henson Company. John Henson, he was the one that put that ad out there that said, do you measure up to be a Muppet? They were looking for somebody my height, my weight, my size, whatever. I answered that ad. I met him. He took me to lunch that day, invited me to his house for New Year's Eve that day. I started doing the Coca-Cola Polar Bear for him, like when he was unavailable or didn't have time to do it. And I think, I was kind of like starting to go like, I think I could maybe be doing this, but I don't know if it ever really became something that I was like, this is the thing I have to do, until I met Carol that day. And he said, oh, your name Vogel means bird in German. This could be the job for you. I think that was the moment where I was like, this could be the job for me. Or maybe this is what I'm supposed to do. I'd never had that dream growing up as a kid, like a lot of other Muppet performers may have had. I just didn't think that was a job that I could have. I didn't know that those were people already did that job when I was growing up. There's, Jim and Frank and Jerry and Richard and Dave and Carol and Fran and all those performers were already doing the job. So,
Fair enough.
Yeah. I have a question for you.
Okay.
When you came to Sesame Street, because you went to Sesame Street many, many times over the years, right? When you were growing up. And you've been on film sets and TV sets your whole life. But what is one of your favorite memories or thoughts when you think of Sesame Street? Visiting Sesame Street.
Oh, I have a good one. I don't remember. I think it might have been Marty who was helping me do it, but there was some shot. I don't remember what it was. I think Elmo was there, and there was an ant, like in a just in the dirt.
Yeah,
and it was super simple puppeteering. So I guess Marty was like, "Oh yeah, you could do it," and then I was just underneath the thing, kind of moving around the little stick just to move it around a little bit, and. I may have been the same day or maybe a different time I'd visited the set, but there was a shot where Telly was like laying on a bed with his legs kind of kicking around.
I remember this.
And I got to operate one of the legs, kicking back and forth and back and forth. And that was a lot of fun for me because I don't remember how old I was at the time. But it was, I got to participate and and actually really experience how they did the whole thing. It was really cool.
That does not happen nowadays. We are not allowed to do that anymore. Just
because of me.
No, not because of you. I'm glad you had that experience. I forgot about the Telly thing, and then I remembered it when she said it. It's really cool. Yeah, Marty's really good about doing that kind of thing, like giving people a moment where they can feel what it's like. And when he does it now, it's usually when we're doing a workshop. We'll sometimes do when we're doing like a presentation in front of, the PR department or whatever. And they'll have us come in and do a puppeteer workshop for the PR department or for the executives, whoever it might be. And there's always a part in it where Marty and I are doing it, and we'll do a right hand moment, and he'll have Telly there, and we'll pick somebody from the group to be Telly's right hand, and they'll get to kind of experience what it's like to be a Muppet performer in that moment. It's pretty cool. Yeah. Thank you very much, Hunter. I appreciate you coming in and sitting with me. Thanks.
Of course.
I want to thank my son Hunter for helping me out today. That is going to be it for this episode, but we will be back next time with more questions and answers. So we'll see you next time on Below the Frame. Below the Frame is a Welcome Matt production produced by me, Matt Vogel. The theme song was written by Stephanie DeBruzzo and myself and performed by my band, The Mighty Weaklings. Thanks to Dave Holteen at DaveHolteenDesign.com. He created our podcast art. You can follow me on Instagram at WelcomeMattV or search Matt Vogel. I post things every now and again, and it'll help you know when new episodes of this podcast, for example, are coming out. If you are sharing podcasts, please let somebody know about this one. And also, if you have a few seconds, just rate and review this one. I'm sure that pleases the podcast gods or something. You can find Below the Frame wherever you get your podcasts, and we are now a video podcast on YouTube, so you can see our faces if that's something that you want to do. Thanks everybody out there for listening. I am Matt Vogel, and we will see you next time when we go Below the Frame.
Go, go, go below the frame.